Hello, everybody. Justin Stivers here. Thank you guys for tuning in, watching, listening to another episode of the Stivers Show. Excited about my guest today, Michele Fernandez. Michele is the Community Engagement Coordinator at Feeding South Florida, which is an amazing nonprofit, which we're going to learn a little bit more about today. Doing a lot of great work. Obviously challenges with COVID and everything like that. But I'm excited to have you on the show. Thanks for coming, Michele.
Oh gosh, well, thank you for having me, Justin, here as a representative of Feeding South Florida. It's definitely a pleasure to be here, and I look forward to the conversation.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, I always like to start, maybe talk, kind of your background, how you got into this, and then, just for people listening and watching, what is Feeding South Florida, what do they do, and all that stuff.
Certainly. So I am on the community engagement team here at Feeding South Florida, and I came into working here with a background in different nonprofit organizations. So previously I was at a couple of different healthcare research nonprofits and was interested in transitioning over to a more program-focused nonprofit. And Feeding South Florida definitely, checks off that note for sure. And so a little bit more background on who we are, and happy to delve into any questions that you might have on more specifics. But we are the largest nonprofit, or excuse me, largest food bank in South Florida, serving the Quad County area here. So Palm Beach, Broward, Miami-Dade, and Monroe counties. We are part of the Feeding America network of food banks, of which there's 200 nationwide. And we actually have learned that in the last year, we've become the second largest food bank nationwide as it relates to the amount of food that we distribute. So as a food bank, sometimes the question comes up, what is a food bank? How is that different from, say, a soup kitchen? We're in the business of food rescue. So we bring in food donations from agricultural farms in the area, access inventory from major retailers or supermarkets. So if you think of Publix or Walmart or Amazon Fresh, we're receiving product from them. And then we redistribute it to a network of 300 nonprofit partner agencies in the community. So some of those might be smaller food pantries receiving product from us. Some of those are soup kitchens or group homes. And so as a food bank, we're providing the food, especially pre-COVID, primarily to those agencies to distribute. Having said that, we do operate a couple of food pantries directly ourselves. All of our work occurs out of our two facilities. We have one in Boynton Beach and one in Pembroke Park. And between the two, they do serve that Quad County area that I mentioned before. So I could speak on forever about the work that we do, but I'll stop there and see if you had any specific questions that I could share a little bit more about.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, I guess it's good and bad that you all are the largest. Good, but bad that there's so many people that need it. So I'm curious, just kind of pure numbers. What is that? How many people are you serving? What does that look like? And has COVID affected that in any way?
Yeah, absolutely. So, to kind of set the stage for you, before COVID, in our fiscal year before COVID, we distributed almost 62 million pounds of food. And then we ended our fiscal year June 30th, so 3 months into COVID, with about 119 million pounds of food distributed. So nearly double that amount. And a vast majority of that output occurred in those last 3 months because of the increase for food assistance that resulted as a result of the pandemic. So what we saw in about mid-March, when COVID-19 began to make its impact here in South Florida, that's when schools closed. It was right around spring break time for a couple of the counties. Us being in a very hospitality rich area, restaurants began to close. A lot of people were furloughed or had reduced hours. And so all of that resulted in this influx of calls and requests for food assistance here at the food bank. At the same time, a portion of those nonprofit partner agencies that I mentioned before, those 300, had to temporarily close themselves. So we found ourselves in a position of, there was a higher need for food, and our normal way of operating just couldn't exist with those agencies being closed. And that's where we pivoted to hosting these drive-through food distributions. We partnered with cities, with municipalities, and with the school districts to host these distributions, ideally taking place at the same time, same location each week across the county area, so people could anticipate that. In terms of numbers, each of those distributions are a little bit different, but they ranged from anywhere to 500 to over to about 1,500 people served at a single distribution, and those are household numbers. So on average, it's about 1,000 households at each distribution, so a total of 4,000 individuals being served at each of those. If we're looking at the calendar year, so it could definitely jump into more stats here. The calendar year, we distributed nearly 175 million pounds of food. And so that's the equivalent of about 146 million meals. We're currently serving the food insecure population of South Florida as a little bit over 1 million people now. Before COVID, it was 706,000 people. And so it currently breaks down to 1 in 6 adults or 1 in 4 kids. So we definitely, it's as you mentioned, it is unfortunate because while we have been able to scale up due to the infrastructure and logistics that we had in place before COVID, the need for that is really directly connected to that increase in food insecurity in South Florida.
Yeah, that's staggering. That's a lot of food. That's a lot of food and a lot of people. When you said people were calling you, is that the organizations calling you saying, "Hey, we need food," or is that individuals? Or would an individual call you all, or is that or no?
Yes, so that was from individuals seeking food assistance. If people are calling 211, they'll often be referred to us as well. So we do have a client services team that can get people connected to resources, to food resources. And so, as I mentioned, we operate those 2 pantries directly, so people can make appointments to receive emergency food here. Our client resources team can also help people in both English and Spanish to get them connected potentially to one of those partner agencies closer to them to receive food there, or one of our distributions. They can notify them about one of those locations. It is updated daily on our website, but for people who might not have access to that or aren't aware that it's on there, we can definitely share that with folks. And then there's also some specific programs that people might qualify for that our team will share with them. So just as an example of one of those programs that we operate in Miami-Dade County, it's called CSFP, Commodity Supplemental Food Program. It's for eligible low-income older adults in Miami-Dade County. So that is to enroll in receiving a monthly food box that will supplement their food and their groceries for the month. So that's just an example of one of the direct programs that we have. If folks are calling in, our team can also help get them enrolled in any benefits that they might be eligible for. So if they are eligible for SNAP, more commonly called food stamps, if they're eligible for Medicaid or even Florida Kid Care, we can assist with those applications or re-enrollment in those programs.
So what does it look like when somebody, because I guess even have kind of in my head a soup kitchen, come get a meal sort of thing, but it sounds like maybe
Mhm.
that's not what you all are doing. Is it,
Mhm.
here's a box of food, or what does that kind of look like?
Yeah. So people, if they are visiting one of our pantries, they're going to be receiving groceries. So that includes both perishable and non-perishable product. So some of the top needed items when people are interested in donating food to us are going to be things like, canned vegetables, hot and cold cereals, so including oatmeal, rice, beans. The product that we also distribute a lot of produce and then dairy and protein for families as well. So they are receiving an assortment of different food items here.
Interesting. And so is it a lot of repeat people coming? Do you have to be, is it a, you know, you can only come so many times, or logistics of that? How does that work?
Mhm. So it is different directly at our pantries versus at our distributions. So our pantries are intended to be emergency food assistance. So most people visiting one of our client choice pantries, so one of Feeding South Florida's pantries, will often come once. There are some people who qualify for monthly appointments or for regular appointments. It is different at our agencies, so people can visit there at different points in times. And then in terms of our food distribution sites, so those drive-through sites, we do find that clients are coming back multiple weeks or sometimes visiting different distributions if they couldn't attend one that is closest to them or that they had visited previously. In fact, that does lead us when we're identifying how many households we've served, we are aware that it is a duplicate number. So for example, during COVID response time, oh, I'm sorry, didn't
That's all
realize
right.
that was on a timer. One moment.
People
I hope.
listening, people won't listening won't know that your screen just went pitch black.
Oh, oh boy. Okay. So sorry about that. There we go. The sensor didn't seem to be working there either, but we're back.
We're
So
back. No worries.
Um, so we have identified that 7.9 million individuals have been served throughout the Quad County area through Feeding South Florida's programs and work. And we're aware that that's, going to include duplicate households, since that's a vast majority of, the population of South Florida. So certainly people are visiting us more than one time. However, since you had mentioned, soup kitchen before, I do want to share that even during COVID, we were able to open up our commercial kitchen, or calling it the community kitchen, up in our Feeding Palm Beach County site in Boynton Beach. And so that site isn't directly serving meals there, but it does have the capacity, once it's fully scaled, to provide up to 10,000 meals a day. And so those are currently being prepared and packaged there and delivered to people's homes. So we're continuing to increase that program, but we do have that community kitchen operating in Boynton Beach at this time.
Wow. The 4,000 people I think you mentioned, is that annual or is that daily or?
Mhm. So that's on average at each distribution site. So
On a
some
daily basis?
yeah, we host about 25 distributions currently each week. So again, the list of those is available on our website. That's www.feedingsouthflorida.org/COVID-19. We have a distribution locator there that identifies which distributions are taking place each day. So it really depends on the day. The vast majority are going to be taking place Monday through Friday. We do have some that take place on Saturdays. So depending on the day, there might be something like 2 to 5 or 6 taking place across the different counties.
I mean, it's quite an operation. Unfortunately, sadly, I mean, great
Mhm.
operation, but again, sadly, just
Mhm.
leads me to, I mean, why so many people? I mean, that's the bigger question, I guess.
Yeah, and we live in an area with a high cost of living, and so that's why even before COVID, a lot of people weren't aware that there are food insecure individuals right here, in our own neighborhoods and in our communities here. One of the misconceptions that exists, and I think there's been more light shed on this during COVID, because so many people unfortunately did become unemployed and lost that emergency income perhaps, or had to dip into their savings. But even before COVID, we often heard, oh, well, you serve homeless populations. And certainly that's a community that we are here for and we do help. But that's actually less than 2% of the people that we serve. So the vast majority are folks who, perhaps they are single parents with children. Perhaps they do have one job or multiple jobs, but aren't receiving the wages needed to be able to cover the full month's worth of needs. Sometimes people are enrolled in SNAP already, but it doesn't cover the full month of food for their family. So that's where we can step in and our partner agencies can step in to help those individuals. Many times it's older adults, which is a big population here in South Florida. So oftentimes it's them or veterans. And so we have programs available for these different populations to get enrolled in.
Yeah, you had mentioned kind of some of the I guess ancillary services that you all provide in terms of if they need to help enroll in benefits. Um, what, if any, I mean, you guys are obviously doing a great job with the core service of providing food, but what about, are you all involved in like after that? Like, how can we help you, get a
Mhm.
job? Whatever the situation might be, you're smiling. So maybe, yeah, you guys are involved in something.
Yeah, I'm just so glad that you mentioned that because, that is kind of where we aim to go. So, we do want to move people from dependency to self-sufficiency. And so we do have plans to launch, for example, one of our job training programs up in the community kitchen that I shared before, to launch a culinary training program this year where people can enroll in that program and then be able to get connected and plugged in to jobs within the restaurant industry. So unfortunately, this last year isn't a great example of that, but it would typically be a stable industry to have certification to be employed in. So that's exactly what we're aiming to do and get people plugged into those job training programs, so that ideally we're not seeing that cycle of poverty and food insecurity continue. So we are aware that it is a cycle. There are health implications when people aren't receiving healthy, stable foods when they're young. That can often lead to a decrease in their educational outcomes. Ultimately, they might find themselves in lower wage jobs and find that cycle of poverty and food insecurity continuing. And so that's what we aim to have an effect on as well.
That's again amazing. So kind of, I know we're kind of coming up on our time, but how can, is there anything you all specifically are looking for? How can people get, and we'll put, email or website and everything in the show notes and everything, but how can people get involved? What are you all looking for? What's the best way for people to get involved who maybe are, think that this is something for them?
Absolutely. So for those in our community who are able to, donating funds to Feeding South Florida has a big impact. We are able to provide 9 meals for every dollar donated. That's for a number of different reasons, but the gifts very much multiply, and we are 98% efficient, over 98% efficient actually, with those funds donated. So it's not going towards fundraising or marketing dollars. It is going toward the work of providing food to the community and to families who are in need of food assistance. And then for folks who would like to more directly, have a hands-on experience, we are still open to volunteers. So that can take place at either of our warehouses. Again, the one in Pembroke Park near Hollywood or up in Boynton Beach. Some of our distributions are also open to having volunteers on site there. There are some age restrictions. And then we have some opportunities up at the community kitchen for people who would like to be involved in the meal preparation and cooking itself.
That's great. And so if people, best way to kind of learn more, get in contact with you, where would you send them?
Mhm. So all of that information is available on our website. So that's www.feedingsouthflorida.org. If they are specifically with a company or with a school and want to explore some other opportunities and ways to be involved, they can always reach our team directly. So on the website, there's a contact form there, and then also our telephone number. We can get them connected to the appropriate team members here. That's 954-518-1818.
Awesome. Michele, thank you for being on the show. Thank you for all that you all do, and appreciate your time. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Justin. It's been a pleasure.
Bye.
Bye.